I'll never forget the first time I was deathly afraid of public speaking, and I'll never forget the first time they give you 30 seconds in a networking thing. I used 7, and they said, keep going. You can do it. You have to be bold. You have to be courageous. People say, I hate your voice. I get feedback like that all the time. I hate your voice. Don't talk about your cat. Shut up. I'm like, okay. And I just let it roll off, because I'm telling you right now, there's someone who's going to say you suck. There's someone who's going to say your work's stupid. Just expect it. And then, well, what are you doing? Well, let me show me your YouTube channel. How many books have you written? Right. And I feel for you, because it's easier to criticize and be a keyboard warrior than put pen to paper or to make something and create. So be brave.
Welcome to Creativity Boost Podcast. Today I have on the show with me an established and accomplished author of 15 books, and her name is Julie. I'm going to give her the opportunity to tell us a bit about herself, but today we are going to be talking about how to unblock your creativity through decluttering. Hi, Julie.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. I'm so excited to have this opportunity to talk to you. I've looked forward to this interview for a long time, and here we are. You want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Julie Caraccio. I'm the owner of Reawaken Your Brilliance, and I have been in business since 2009. And I'm very passionate about helping people become more aware, and we do that through decluttering and organizing. And I have a bigger view of clutter. Most people think of just the physical stuff, but my definition of clutter is this. It's anything that prevents you from creating the life and space you choose, deserve, and desire, right? So clutter is the stuff that doesn't matter. You might have clutter in your relationships. You might have an emotional clutter. You might have clutter at the holidays. So it's about clearing all of that clutter so you can focus on what matters most.
Wow, I like the way you articulated all of that. It sounds pretty well put together. It seems like you say that very often.
I do, because I get very passionate about it, and it's so different, but it's something that's important to me anytime I talk to someone, to make them aware of that.
Wow. So how did you come about this subject matter of decluttering? I never ever thought that there was a body of knowledge that one could expound on the way you have done. So how did you come about this?
Well, I had started a business, Healing Through Organization, and I don't recommend changing your business name. That was a semi-nightmare. But I had purposefully called it Healing Through Organization because I was in a job. My background was in fund development, so raising money for nonprofit, and it was a crazy job. And I thought, I just don't want to go to another job. But what can I do? And I'm like, I can do organizing. And then in the meantime, I started my business, and then I started doing an internet TV show where I'd interview body, mind, spirit experts, and I'd drive to a studio, and I came up with the name of Reawaken Your Brilliance. And then as I'm doing the show, I went to a client, and she said, can we just talk? And I'm there to declutter and organize our house. And I said, we're the client. We can do whatever you want. And so I usually work in 4-hour blocks when it comes to decluttering a home, and we spent 3 hours talking just about everything going on in her life. And the last hour, we cleared through so much clutter, and that was an aha moment for me. Like, you know what? You need to get certified in coaching. You need to learn a little more here and dig deeper. It's more impactful to clear the clutter, and then once you do that, you can get organized. But the clutter, I found, had the deeper impact.
Wow, that's amazing. And I've come to know that you're also a certified life coach. So it's obvious that you work with a lot of people. Now, bringing all of that knowledge and experience, being that you work with people, what do you have to say about the impact of clutter on creativity?
I believe, and I know there are people that are arguing with me, but if you clear your clutter, I think your creativity goes through the roof. I look at clutter as being a block. Like, as I mentioned earlier, I want people to think bigger. And so, for instance, a messy desk is not just a messy desk and the physical clutter, but that's the roadblock to writing your novel or doing your painting, right? And to see the bigger picture of it. And so I believe when we clear the clutter from our lives, then we can focus on our creative projects. We can have relationship clutter when someone says, you suck at writing, right? And then you excited and you're like, no, I'm creative. And that clutter then brings you back into your shell, or you stop writing because of what that person said to you. So that's how I want people to think of creativity in that bigger sense and how it relates to clutter.
Well, that's a lot, and there's a lot of information there to unpack. Like talking about the messy decks, I definitely know several people who think otherwise. Most of the depiction of creative people that I have seen has been a picture of messy desks, a picture of messy workshops, a picture of messy rooms.
Yeah.
So, what's the reason for that? Why do people think otherwise than you think?
I think they tie in being able to accomplish things with the clutter. And they view that if you remove the clutter, then they're afraid their creativity is going to go out the door. That poof, it's just going to disappear. And I think that's a false assumption, but that's why they stay stuck with the clutter.
Amazing. So you feel like even if one is creative with clutter, without clutter, that person could be exponentially more creative. Is that what you think?
Absolutely, 100%. And I know everyone won't agree with me, and that's fine. And let's talk. When I say this, the first thing out of people's mouths is Einstein. Einstein was a genius, and he had that desk that was a hot mess. And I say he could have done more. And I'm not discounting all the great things he does, but I believe that he could have done more. You know, everything's energy. So if you have a cluttered desk, a cluttered workspace, then you aren't bringing life. You're not in the flow. You're not in the energetic flow. And that's how I know, at least for me, all my ideas literally come from somewhere else and drop right into my brain and my head. But if I have all that clutter around, they can't get through. And it's like...
And you made mention... Okay, go ahead.
I want to do an analogy of a straw. If you were having that smoothie and the straw, you have this grip, you're not going to get all that luscious goodness in. But as you release that, it allows it to come forward.
And then you mentioned something about relationship clutter. You mentioned something about when someone makes a negative comment about your creative endeavor and doesn't like encourage you, and then that clutters your creativity. I've actually worked with people in that situation where people who they hold dear to themselves, people who they hold in high esteem, do not endorse their work, do not appreciate their work, do not acknowledge their work, and somehow that causes them to block their creative pipe from flowing, if I may use that word. How can one overcome that kind of situation where, because as far as I'm concerned, you would always find naysayers, you would always find people who would discourage you. So how do you keep your mind free and clear from that kind of clutter?
Great question. My biggest thought on that is to remember and remind yourself, so someone criticizes you, Julie, you suck as a writer. And then I say to myself, what others do and say is about them, and how I handle it is about me. If I close down, that's a wound within me. I don't think I'm good enough, and it's like they just found a little target. But if I have that, know that that's not true, then I let it just bounce right off of me. Okay. And then wash it off, right? Because they might be frustrated with their creativity, and so they see you out there doing it. And I want to be clear, there's a difference between being a naysayer and negative and providing constructive criticism. Like I'm working on a project now and so on some meditations, and I asked a dear friend, I was like, give feedback. And she gave a lot of good feedback. And I was like, wow, this is really a guided meditation. It wasn't how I started it out to be, but I was like, wow, that's a really good insight from her. But there was something else, and she said, no, you have to change the tense in this. And I was like, no, and let me do some Googling. I'm like, no, I'm right. How I'm saying it is a stronger vibrational thing. But it wasn't, it was just her feedback. So that's really important to take in what others say. Is there something constructive that I can learn, and let the rest of the stuff flow off you.
Amazing. So, did you have a personal encounter with clutter? Did you ever experience a time in your life where you felt like you were in a clutter in any area of your life? that brought you into this realization and gave you this passion that you so strongly hold?
I would say yes. So when I was doing the show Reawaken Your Brilliance, I would interview body, mind, spirit experts, and I was very passionate. And so I would read, they'd say, well, read my book, or let's do a session as we're interviewing, and so I can give an example so people understand my teaching. And so it was really about looking at my mental, emotional, spiritual clutter and clearing that. I never tended to have a lot of physical clutter, and I've been in a lot of homes, and we downsize regularly and are continually, and I'm like, oh, let's get rid of stuff. But yeah, that for me, that period of about 3 years was really going deeper and doing the coaching and working with someone and clearing all that.
So from what you're saying, it becomes like very imminent to have maybe like a coach or someone you can talk to if you want to clear your clutter. Is it not something that you can just do on your own?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, but I would say listen to podcasts. Like someone who's creative listening to this podcast is going to get a lot of knowledge and takeaways that they can say, okay, this is what I learned from Julie. This is what I've learned from another guest. This is what I've learned from you. And they can do the work. Absolutely. Listen to podcasts, watch a YouTube, read a book. There are different options out there. But sometimes you just need support. And it's knowing when, you know what, I need help. I can't figure this out. And I need someone who's neutral and can give me some suggestions.
Wow. Do you have a book on this?
I have, my book, yes. Not specifically on creativity, but, I talk a lot, the inner reflects the outer. So as you clear your physical deaths, then you're going to get mental clarity. Or as you let go of emotional clutter, that allows you to be like, oh, I don't have to keep up with the Joneses. I can let this go. Who cares how much stuff I have? So I really focus on, it's called Clear Your Clutter Inside and Out, and looking at mental, physical, emotional, spiritual clutter. And then I have, because I'm so passionate, everyone listening knows what's best for them.
Hey, have you ever desired to write a book or become a published author, but somehow you don't know what to write about, you don't know what to call what you write about, you don't know how to write what you want to write about, or you don't know how to finish what you started writing about? Maybe you started writing and you're stuck for years, or maybe you even finished writing, but you don't know what to do with your manuscript, or you don't have a publisher. No one wants to give you a publishing contract, and so you are stuck. Well, I've got good news for you. There are 8 things stopping you from writing your first book, and I have a free training that will help you overcome all of these 8 things holding you back. And once you're able to overcome these 8 things, you'll be able to write your first book in 30 days. Yes, you heard me right, 30 days. After you watch that training, you're going to get my free ebook on your email that will show you how to write a book profitably, even if you hate writing or you don't know what to write, where to start, or how to finish. If you're tired of postponing your desire and dream to become a published author or to write your first book, click the link below this video, register for this training, and watch it right away.
I view my job as helping people bring out the wisdom within. So I did a whole journal prompt series on holiday, relationships, you name it, and guide people to finding the answers within, because that's what gets me really excited too. You know what's best. Let's just bring up that wonderful information.
Wow. And from my own understanding, I think that clutter also plays a role in how people discover their purpose, because I believe there's a lot of work that should be done in uncovering one's purpose because it's buried deep within. So how do you help people, or what is your prescription, or what is your framework that you feel people who are yet to discover their purpose can, use to discover it?
Well, that I would first say, I encourage people that your purpose is to love. That no matter what else you do in life, start from that premise, because that's something that can really have an impact. If my job is to love someone, then how does that manifest itself? So when working with someone, I have a little questionnaire, we kind of get started, and then it's all about doing discovery work. So for one client, it might be like, you know what, this week you're going to say no to what doesn't work for you, right? And then you start understanding, oh, you know what, I really don't want to do that. I don't want to play tennis, but I really enjoy playing games, right? And then you kind of figure and go out, and as you clear that clutter and you help zone in, then you can figure out, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I'm excited about. And looking like, what skill set do I have? And, being creative and thinking outside the box. And, you can create it, meaning maybe, well, like for instance, not a lot of people do my job. And that's a good example. So I started out just kind of hardcore organizing, but I'm like, ooh, it's decluttering, but we've got to bring in all these aspects of decluttering. So as you figure out the parts and things that work for you, then you can come up with something that might, quote unquote, not be mainstream, but that it works for you. And so like with what I do, it uses my talents. It's what I'm passionate about and gets me out of bed every morning, and finding that what works for me.
Wow. There's something that, attracted me to you when I met you, and it's the fact that you came up with, a message. You have a message, and you felt passionate about this message, and you ran with it, and that's the message of decluttering. And I've never heard of it before, and it's really, really unique. So I find that as an expression of creativity on your part. So how did you get this message out there? Did people immediately just embrace the concept of decluttering? Was it something they were already aware of? How did you get the message out there and get people to see their need for what you have to say?
Sure. I really would say that my podcast, I did a podcast for a decade, but I ended it last August, but it's still going strong. I'm still getting a lot of downloads. So for me, that was the podcast, because I started that in September 2013 or September 2014. And so that kind of took me outside. I was living in Raleigh, North Carolina at the time. So that helped me find a bigger audience. But then I love speaking, especially I do a lot of employee wellness program, and I love that because people, instead of corporate, like, make them more efficient. It's like, well, let's talk about their clutter in their lives, and let's make them happy, and let's look what's going on at home and stuff. So I'd say that the podcast was a big part of that, and then the books that I started and the speaking were really what put me on a bigger stage for people to discover that. And then also, you need to have a website. You need to have good SEO. I blog regularly. So again, getting people to the website. So I think it was a combination of those things.
Wow, that's awesome. So talking about a husband-wife situation or a family situation where there's clutter in the relationship, are there creative ways that a family can remove clutter from their relationship, from their emotional state, and their day-to-day lives?
That's a great question. So I have found when I work with families that it's a combination. If it's just a couple, one tends to be a little more disorganized and have a little more clutter, and the other person tends to be organized and be like, let's get rid of stuff. And then I've seen it with kids. It's really fascinating how some kids take after one parent, and so you have this combination. So when I work with a family or a couple, the first thing I say is, we're here to work together. Leave the past in the past. We're going to start in this present moment. If we want to express something, we use I feel statements, right? And then we begin to come up with a plan and work together. The person who's super organized and decluttered, that's not always the solution. So here's an example. If someone would say to me, oh my gosh, my husband reads, I'm a big reader. Oh my gosh, my husband reads all the time and all our books are everywhere and it drives me crazy. Then I'll say, well, let's have a little basket on his nightstand or by the bed where he can put all his books and keep them contained. Because one thing, if we don't contain clutter, like if you're just throw something on your hallway table, it's going to morph into a big pile, and containing it helps prevent that. And so, but then I say to the person that's super organized, okay, he's not going to alphabetize them. It might not be a little messy, and you got to let that go. We've contained it, but you can't expect it to be super organized. So it's finding that balance. I'm a firm believer in common spaces. So like in the kitchen, the living room, the TV room, you establish some rules and some guidelines. But in the bedroom, like especially with kids, give them some leeway. Let them decide. Again, if you're super neat and it's a teenager, just let it go because they're probably going to have some clothes on the store. So it's, again, finding that balance and working together as a team and not making one person right and not making one person wrong. And then communication is so important. I believe in setting goals as a family. I do that with my husband and always checking in. I'm always like, how am I doing as a wife? Are there ways that I need to be improved? And being able to hear feedback. I used to be it was hard for me to hear criticism and that was, again, had nothing to do with my husband. That was all about me and my wounds and my healing and things that needed to happen, and be like, okay, this is about you. How can you learn to hear it? Not as criticism, but as feedback. So it's about, again, working as a family, but then working on ourselves.
Cool. And that makes absolute sense. So what about a situation of unforgiveness, between people, not necessarily even spouses or family? You could include that, but generally, I feel like that's also something that a lot of people have, cluttering their minds, cluttering their emotions, cluttering their creativity, even though they may not admit it, right? So is there any connection there, and how can that be dealt with?
1,000%. I consider forgiveness or being unable to give spiritual clutter. And if you were to ask me to name like the top 3 spiritual clutter, forgiveness would be in that. And so you have to remember, when you are unable to forgive someone, that's cluttering your heart, that's cluttering your mind. You're allowing someone to live rent-free. I've been reading a lot about this new album with Taylor Swift, and I've been fascinated because I read this article that if you don't like her music, people are ending friendships. And it's not saying like, oh, she sucks. They're just like, oh, her music's not my taste. I'm getting to a point here. So the one song is supposed to be about Kim Kardashian and how she treated her. I get it. That was horrible what she and Kanye did and all that. But it's been years. When is Taylor going to let that go? Now, this is assuming that this is right. But everyone seems to think this Thank You, Amy is about Kim Kardashian. But at some point, Taylor has to let that go, right? Okay, let me say, Taylor can do whatever she wants. But I think, and you can say, well, she got a couple songs out of it. Fantastic. But then move on, move forward. That holds you back. You're holding that grudge. It hurts you. The other person probably is not aware that you haven't forgiven them. They've moved on, but you've stayed stuck, right? I've talked about energy. Clutter is stuck, stagnant energy, and when you don't forgive, that's where you are. You stay stuck and you can't move forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a business setting, what do you see the impact of decluttering? Like in a business setting, does decluttering have any relevance there?
Oh, 1,000%. So the main thing that I see is decluttering the office and having that organized. They've done studies that 80-some%, if they see a disorganized and cluttered desk, they think you're less incompetent, right? So if you're trying to advance in the workplace and your desk is cluttered, people are going to be like, and they don't trust you, right? Oh, I'm afraid to give Julie a piece of paper. She's going to lose it. I see that hot mess that's total cluttered desk. So it absolutely can. I also think like the relationship of being able to take criticism at work, right? And being not gossiping at work. Gossip is another spiritual clutter that I consider. And so figuring out how has clutter affected you at work in addition to the physical thing. And again, that's about being self-aware. I think so many of us need to increase our self-awareness, and awareness plus action equals change. You got to understand what it is and become aware, and then do things differently to create the life you desire.
Okay, so let me take you back to the home front now. How can you declutter when you have kids, little kids who they know nothing about decluttering? In fact, they have an assignment to clutter up the living room with toys and all of their stuff. So how do you cope with that? And you can also share some of your experiences with that, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, I love that you asked this question, because if you instill in kids how to declutter regularly and how to stay organized, you've set them up for success in life. I've worked with people who have never decluttered, and they have all this stuff and the emotional attachment. So you can teach 2 and 3-year-olds, okay, we're going to put our toys away. This is the home. This is super important. We have a home. We have a basket. I talked about, you want to be able to contain the toys. I don't want them in an area. I want them in a box where it's easier. Okay, let's pick up our toys. We're going to spend 5 minutes at the end. Let's put the toys in their home. We're going to make the toys happy. That's really important. Teaching kids to purge regularly. You know what? We just got a bunch of Christmas or holiday gifts, or we just got a bunch of birthday gifts. Let's go through what we're not using. Oh, and you know what? And I love this. Take a child, and it works for adults too, to a charity that they're passionate about. Oh, you know what? You love the animals. So if we donate this, then maybe they can sell it or they can use it in the shelter, right? And so they tie that. If I let stuff go, it's going to help someone else, or it's going to help my cause that I'm very passionate about. So kids need to learn to be able to purge regularly, and parents need to understand and hear what the kids have to say. So like at the end of the school year, I'd be going through all the papers, like what can we let go? And you might think, oh my gosh, this project, yikes. And the kids like, I absolutely love this. I made this in pottery class and they think it's the best thing ever. And you're thinking, not sure how that looks. But you honor what's important to your child, and let them make the decisions. Again, when you're younger, you work together, but that's a way of honoring the child's creativity. This obviously sparks some type of joy, so you keep that item, but you do these things regularly.
Great. So when I also looked at your profile, I saw that you started out in your journey at about 40 years, and then you became self-published at the age of 50 or 53. I can't remember exactly which. Now, have you ever found yourself to be a creative person? And what was the aha moment for you that made you take that turn at 40?
Well, to start the job, I think being a small business owner, I'm a solopreneur, definitely you need to be creative, because you need to think of, how can I market? How can I get the word out? The podcast to me is creative. Writing the books is creative. And I was 50 when I first self-published. And I can't remember, maybe 52 is when I started tennis. Yeah, that's what I started and did. And so I think I've always loved writing. I've always loved writing, and I'm in the process of creating an Etsy store. I want to take decluttering in another level with all my kind of spiritualness, and so that's what I'm in the process of doing right now. And it's been really great because it's been a super creative outlet for me, because when you're decluttering and organizing, that can be kind of dry. You definitely bring creativity into that, and so I believe that I always have. And I mentioned earlier about like different aspects in creating my business, and I have to have some form of creativity. Like I like writing a blog, to me is creative, and so since the beginning of the business. But how can I bring that creativity in? And I'm super excited about the Etsy store, because that's on a whole other level, creativity and clutter for me. So I'm super excited about that. But I think it's important to remember, you can have your 9-to-5 job, and if you can't immediately be creative, you do that side hustle. Or it doesn't even have to be a side hustle. You do that painting or that writing on the weekend, and do something that feeds your soul, right? Because I think we're all creative. We all have that talent. It's just a lot of us haven't had the opportunity or don't find the time. I would rather you sit and do pottery than be on Facebook for a couple hours a day, right? And honor yourself and give yourself time to be creative.
That's amazing. Now, there are 7 categories of people who are potential creatives, but they never become creative. One of these 7 categories is the suppressed creatives. I call them the suppressed creatives. These are people who have suppressed their gifts, skills, talents, wisdom, knowledge, experience on the bedrock of societal expectations, on the bedrock of the pressures from outside, policies, government policies, company policies, whatever policies, religious superstitions. Now, there's a lot of people in this category, and I feel like now that we're talking about decluttering, it makes sense to put something out there for people who are suppressing themselves, suppressing their talent, suppressing their gift, suppressing that inner voice, trying to prod them to manifest their creativity. And generally, the whole idea of this podcast is to inspire such people to ignite their creativity and give them that jump start. So how do you feel like we can inspire such people who may be listening right now? Do you have something to say to them that would ignite that spark in them?
I would say, you're definitely creative, and find a group of people that honor that, right? Take that first step. Maybe it's, where I am now, I'm really excited that a writers group is forming. I'm like, I really want to be part of a writing community. So I think that's the time when you look within, I love how you describe that, like societal expectations and corporate expectation. I think that's so true. Honor you. I'm a firm believer of having some sort of meditation practice. But it doesn't have to be like sitting on, like I believe mowing the lawn is a very creative time for me. It's like I can do a mind dump. I have a friend that listens to classical music. And take the time to get quiet with yourself. And so that you can hear that inner wisdom, right? And then you can find a trusting group and put your foot out there. I'll never forget the first time I was deathly afraid of public speaking. And I'll never forget the first time they give you 30 seconds in a networking thing. I used 7 and they said, keep going. You can do us. Tell us more. Tell us more. So finding that wisdom within and that quieting to hear that, and then beginning to build that community to support you. And you have to be bold. You have to be courageous. People say, I hate your voice. I get feedback like that all the time. I hate your voice. Don't talk about your cat. Shut up. I'm like, okay. And I just let it roll off, because I'm telling you right now, there's someone who's going to say you suck. There's someone who's going to say your work's stupid. Just expect it. And then, well, what are you doing? Well, let me show me your YouTube channel. How many books have you written? Right, and I feel for you, because it's easier to criticize and be a keyboard warrior than put pen to paper or to make something and create. So be brave.
Wow, that's some brave thoughts there. Because I definitely know that people cave in when they get these negative comments on social media, or from their community or from their family or from their loved ones. Sometimes these loved ones are not intending to do any damage, but they end up poisoning the minds, the hearts of these creatives. And it takes a lot of discipline and a lot of maturity to handle it and deal with it and move on and still stay the course and manifest your creativity and be excited about that unique thing you bring to the world as your value. So it's really, really profound that you said what you said. So what do you have to say to people who they are stuck because they feel like they are not creative. They feel like they don't have ideas. They feel like, because they've repeatedly been put down, they do not count anything that comes to their mind as worth the while anymore. So their mind has been cluttered with lots of impossibility thinking.
Yeah.
So anything that comes to their mind is not possible. It's not possible. It won't work. People won't like it. So how do you help someone like that?
Yeah, I would say one thing, do affirmations. I am creative. I am worthy. I am loved. I am good enough, right? Because I believe we're either coming from love or fear and hate. And so you look yourself in the mirror. And this is a great exercise, because a lot of people can't do that and immediately go down like that. They can't look at their eyes in the mirror. But you start with those affirmations. And that's why I'm saying find that group of people that support you. You know what? And then you remind yourself, you know what? They're frustrated. They're going to put me down. Well, you know what? You be frustrated. I'm getting back on my path. I believe in myself, right? And then have a journal. Like, just start journaling. Or if you have a creative idea, write it down, right? And, if you keep doing that consistently, a little bit will go by and you'll be like, wow, I have all these ideas, and get something to get excited about. And then this is super important, especially when, and the first time, I wrote my book, I showed my BFF. And she was great. And she was like, okay, we need to do some work here. And gave me incredibly valuable feedback. But she could have been like, oh my God, this is this isn't a book. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Instead, she was like, we've got a book here. We need to do some work, right? And so when you are bringing that project, you only share that, especially in the beginning, with people who support you and believe in you.
Yeah.
Because so you can get all excited and then someone just burst that bubble. And maybe I've seen it simply with decluttering. I had a client once say, I was judged. And she had been widowed at a young age with kids. And so there were reasons that she held on to everything because of what she lost when she was so young. And someone judged her. And then it was 4 years before she called me. So that's why it's super important to bring it in front of people that support you.
Wow, that is so amazing. I think you really, really hit a home run with all your answers, and I believe that whoever has listened to us or whoever is listening to us would have found profound and impactful information that will change the trajectory of their lives. And so I don't know if you have any final words, if you were to tell your younger self something that you thought or you felt like you should have known back then when you were the age of 20 that relates to decluttering and creativity and unblocking creativity, what would that be?
I would say a couple things. I would tell myself that I was worthy and I was good enough and I was loved no matter what. And I don't like to use the word mistakes because if we learn, how else are we going to learn? So I'm going to screw up at times, but that doesn't mean that I'm unlovable. And to remember that no matter what, to remind myself that I'm in charge of my happiness. It doesn't come from anyone else. Even if 100 people say you suck, there's that one person say, oh my gosh, you influence me. You are bright, a light bright in my life. And so that you are in charge of your happiness and that, you are creative. You are creative. Everyone listening and watching this, because you all have talent. And boy, we need your gifts. We need you to share your gifts with the world more than ever now. And just get out there and do it. You can.
Wow. And one thing that really stood out for me in all your responses is how you said affirmation, can really help, looking yourself in the mirror or just talking to yourself, because that inner critic, that voice, those voices of, those voices of disaffection, those voices of disapproval, those voices of criticism, destructive criticism, they needs to be silenced with your own voice. And you need to hear yourself telling yourself who you are, because you are creative. Thank you so much for that, Julie. I think this is a very good place to bring today's episode to a close. I want to believe for you who's listening to this on the other side, you found something that would really, really take you from where you are to the next level in your creativity. I believe you found that spark that will boost your journey and help you achieve your goals as a creative. And so if that's the case, I encourage you to tell someone about this show, tell someone about Creativity Boost Podcast, share this episode with a loved one, with a family, with a friend, and help us spread the word around the world about creativity and get everyone fired up for more creative exploits. And to you, Julie, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your profound wisdom. I look forward to us doing this again sometime in the future. But till then, I'm going to say have a good one, everyone, and see you in our next episode. Bye-bye.